Okay, so here's something to think about. The WNBA is now signing players to $1 million contracts. That's a huge leap forward for women's sports. And
It really is, and it's just one of the big stories we're covering today.
welcome to DeActa Daily Digest. I'm Joseph.
And I'm Juniper. Here are today's top stories.
First, the WNBA is back with a new season. And it's not just about basketball, it's about progress, big moves, and even bigger paychecks. Then we'll look at the US stock market, which has been on fire in the first half of 2026, thanks to easing geopolitical tensions and a semiconductor boom. Finally, we'll dive into the escalating crisis in the Middle East, where Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz amid ongoing violence in Lebanon.
There's a lot to unpack, so let's start with the WNBA. Joseph, what's the most exciting part of this new season for you?
Honestly, it's the $1 million contracts. For years, WNBA players have been advocating for better pay, and this new collective bargaining agreement is a game changer. It's not just about the money, it's about what that money represents: respect, recognition, and a step toward equality in sports.
Absolutely, and it's not just the contracts that are making headlines. The defending champions, the Las Vegas Aces, are coming into this season with a lot of momentum. Aja Wilson, the reigning MVP, is leading the charge, and she's been nothing short of dominant on the court. And
She really has. But let's not forget about the other teams that could challenge them. The Atlanta Dream, for example, made a huge off-season move by acquiring Angel Reese from the Chicago Sky. That's a team that already won 30 games last season, and now they've added even more firepower.
and then there's the Indiana Fever. They had a tough time last season without Caitlin Clark, who was out for much of the year. But now that she's back and healthy, they could be a real contender. It's amazing how much of a difference one player can make.
It really is. And speaking of challenges, the New York Liberty are facing one of their own. Sabrina Ionescu went down with an ankle injury in the preseason, and that's a big blow for them. Injuries are always a wild card in sports, aren't they?
They are, and they can completely change the trajectory of a season. But one thing that's changing for the better is how fans can watch the games. The league is making games more accessible through streaming platforms like Fubo, and that's a big deal. It's easier than ever for fans to follow their favorite teams.
Absolutely. And with games being broadcast on major networks like ABC and CBS, it feels like the WNBA is finally getting the spotlight it deserves. This could be a breakout season for the league.
Let's hope so. But now let's shift gears and talk about the US stock market. The first half of 2026 has been remarkable, with the Nasdaq up 12% and the Dow hitting an all-time high. What's driving these gains?
A big part of it is the easing of geopolitical tensions, particularly the interim US-Iran agreement that reopened the Strait of Hormuz. That was a major catalyst for the market rally.
Right. The day that agreement was announced, the Nasdaq jumped 3% and the Dow closed at a record high. Oh, it's a great example of how interconnected politics and economics are. When tensions ease, markets respond positively.
And within the market, semiconductor stocks have been the standout performers. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index is up nearly 100% year to date. Companies like Intel, Micron, and Broadcom are leading the charge, especially with the growing demand for AI infrastructure.
AI really is the buzzword of the year, isn't it? Investors are pouring money into anything tied to artificial intelligence, and it's paying off. But it's not just tech. Corporate earnings across sectors have been surprisingly strong. By early June, 84% of S&P 500 companies had beaten earnings expectations, with year-over-year growth averaging 25.6%.
That's incredible, especially when you consider that typical earnings growth is around 7%. It's clear that companies are performing well, and that's giving investors a lot of confidence. Plus, falling energy prices are helping, thanks to the geopolitical easing.
Exactly. And it's worth noting that diversified investment strategies like index funds and dollar cost averaging have done really well in this environment. But for those who took a more concentrated approach in semiconductors or AI stocks, the returns have been even more impressive.
It's a good reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to investing. Different strategies work for different people, depending on their risk tolerance and goals. But let's switch to our final story. It's a heavy one. The situation in the Middle East is escalating, with Iran announcing the closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, this is a major development. Iran is framing the closure as a response to Israeli strikes in Lebanon and what it calls bad faith by the U.S. in their interim agreement. It's a tense situation, to say the least.
And the timing couldn't be more critical. Negotiators are heading to Switzerland for talks, with Pakistan and Qatar acting as mediators. Iran's delegation includes some high-ranking officials, which suggests they're taking this very seriously.
But even as these talks are set to begin, the violence in Lebanon continues. Israeli strikes have killed thousands, and Hezbollah is accusing Israel of violating a ceasefire. It's a complex and deeply troubling situation.
It really is. And Iran's move to close the Strait of Hormuz has huge implications, not just for the region, but for the global economy. That strait is a critical choke point for oil shipments, and any disruption there can send shockwaves through energy markets.
Interestingly, the U.S. military reported that commercial traffic is still moving through the strait, with over 17 million barrels of oil reaching global markets on Saturday. But the question is, how long can that continue if tensions escalate further?
That's the big question. And then there's the broader issue of the Israel-Hezbollah conflict. Mediators are trying to broker a ceasefire, but both sides seem entrenched in their positions. Israel wants to eliminate perceived threats, while Hezbollah insists on an Israeli withdrawal from Lebanese territory.
It's a heartbreaking situation for civilians caught in the crossfire. Residents in southern Lebanon are describing smoke-filled skies and constant airstrikes. A lasting ceasefire could transform life in the region, but right now it feels like a distant hope.
Agreed. And as much as we'd like to end on a more optimistic note, the reality is that these issues, whether in sports, markets, or geopolitics, are complex and ongoing. But they're also a reminder of how interconnected our world is.
Absolutely. Whether it's a basketball game, a stock market rally, or a geopolitical crisis, these stories all reflect the challenges and opportunities of our time. Let's hope for progress on all fronts.
Here's to that. Thanks for the conversation, and we'll see what unfolds next.
Until next time.